think every parent can relate to this. You bring your kid home, it falls asleep in the kindergarten, in the car, and then you are just praying that you can bring him into bed without him waking up, And we managed to, and everything was going great until I had to change his diaper. And then he woke up. So I kind of rushed into the diaper, which worked out in that way. He did fall asleep again, but it meant that the whole bed was peed on this morning. So I woke up at 6 in the morning with clothes all wet, everything wet, and then the day just goes from there. Just continues and continues, isn't it?
I know it's like it doesn't ever stop. Like I don't have children myself, but once someone has children, it's like they're always a parent,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't ever stop.
24/7. Yeah, it's
Yeah, yeah.
24/7. No holidays, no sick days. It's like you're always a parent. You go on holidays with your kid, you're still parenting. You're just doing it in a place where you have less resources and you don't have the things your kid is used to, and your kid is out of their routine. So actually, it just makes everything much harder, isn't it?
Yeah, I wonder if it's like, sometimes like when you have like a job and like they say parenting is like one of the most important jobs in the world, right? And sometimes I look back and I think about it, I was like, do you get like benefits? Do you get vacation? Do you get a pay increase? Do you get sick days? You don't get any of that, right?
And on top of that, it's like in a normal job, if you do a good job, right? Or if you're trying at least, you usually get at least a pat in the back, but sometimes you can even get a promotion, right? But in parenting, especially for moms, it's like you're just doing your job. No matter how good you do, people are just like, that's what you're supposed to do. Like you're not doing more than you should be doing. If you do something wrong, then you're an awful parent. That's why your kid is so bad. That's why the world is going to end, whatever. But if you do things good, no one pats you in the back. That's why I always talk about why it's so important to have this self-compassion, because we have to be the ones to pat ourselves in the back, because no one else, unfortunately, is going to do that.
Yeah, yeah. And the promotion is becoming a grandparent, right? That's the promotion, more responsibility.
I have no idea. I haven't been, but I've heard that it's awesome being a grandparent because you have just the good parts without the bad parts. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, because you actually get to send the child away after you're done
Yeah.
with them, right? Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
don't have to discipline them or anything, You can just give them all the candy and then the parent has to deal with all the sugar high.
I know. Imagine that. Imagine like if you had the choice where you're gonna say, okay, you know what, I'm done being a parent today. You take them for today, right?
But I do that, I do. I think it's really important we do that as parents, because that's why there are two, for the people who are lucky enough to have a co-parent that is actually participating. So I am lucky to have my husband who is a parent, because many women unfortunately are married to men that are just another child, right? But if you are lucky to have another person who shares the responsibilities of parenting, as it should be, then it's really important that both of you take time off. For instance, every month we take one day off. So my husband has a day off. He does whatever he wants, and I take a day off where I go to the thermal baths and do nothing. And every day we take at least 1 hour a day each. So he has my son, I have 1 hour, and the other way around. And we try to find these moments, like every month we really put in the calendar. Like tomorrow, for instance, is our family day. So every month we have a family day where for a whole day we do something that the three of us enjoy, and it's important that it's something that the three of us enjoy. So that's really like fun for everyone. And also like once a month, which might not seem a lot, but when you're a parent of a little child, once a month we have a romantic date. So we try and have like these things that we really put in the calendar, even if we don't feel like. For instance, we had our romantic date last Friday and we didn't really feel like it. We were both very tired, but we were just like, let's just order some Indian food, watch some House, House, the TV series. It's an easy thing to watch because it's one episode after the other. And it just reminds you of how it is life before you have kids. I mean, you don't have kids, so it might seem like that's not a very interesting romantic date. But when you have kids, that's like reminding you of how life was.
I love Indian food. So if that could be a date night for me, I will take that every day of the week and twice on Sunday. I love it. And what you mentioned something that was actually funny that I want to touch on, that I've heard parents who like they're married and they feel, to your point, right? They feel like they're raising like another child, and it's always funny for me to hear that, because I always ask myself, did you just find this out when you married him or when you
Yeah.
married her? Right? Like, isn't that kind of weird? Because it's not like I met Christina today, Sunday we're married, Monday we have a kid. There's a process to all this, right? So I wonder what are your thoughts? Like, how do they get caught up in a situation like that?
I think that the problem is that women are just hopeless romantics who really think that they can change men. But one thing that I learned over the years after having a lot of crappy relationships, and I had my share, my huge share. Actually, my husband is one of my first healthy relationships. So what I learned is that it's not, you cannot change another person, because if you want to change another person, then you're not really in love with that person. You're in love with the idea that you have of that person. So if that's just by itself a wrong premise. So if you're with someone in that idea of like, oh, it's like this, but I can change him, then, and it will only get worse when you have kids, because it's so, I don't understand that concept where people say, oh, they had a kid to save their marriage. I really don't understand because it's quite the opposite. It does bring you together because you have to fight so many things together, right? But it only brings it together if you are able to fight those things together, because it just brings constant, especially in the beginning, that first year, because everything is new, right? You have all those routines. And before, when you're pregnant, it's like, don't worry, we will share and we will both change diapers. But then, in the middle of the night, your child wants to breastfeed every 2 hours. And your husband, unfortunately, is not able to breastfeed. So this means that instead of being, we will change each one diaper, it has to be more like, I am breastfeeding, you're changing diapers, for instance. And this is all conversations that people need to have while they are sleep deprived, while they are stressed out, while there's a kid screaming, because the kid doesn't be like, is not going to be like, okay, I'm going to sleep now for 3 hours so you can guys can have a conversation and decide things. No, you're doing this while the kid is screaming. And you have to keep your cool. This is really challenging. It's very, very challenging, that first year, especially. And then, of course, for me, the worst part of parenting is other people. So that part is also really, really challenging, because there's a whole new dynamic with family and everything, because things that before were like, okay, I don't mind doing that. It's not something I want to do, but I don't mind. When you have a kid, then your kid is your priority number one, and you need to impose those boundaries. And it's really, really hard. And if you don't have a supporting partner right from the beginning, that can make it even harder, because you are already sleep deprived, stressed out, worried, feeling alone, because it is, being a parent is very lonely sometimes. And then on top of that, having that stress, because just alone the stress when you're fighting with your partner is already enough to put you in a dark cloud, right? But on top of all the rest, I can't even imagine how hard that must be.
Yeah, like what you mentioned remind me of two situations. One, it reminded me of a soap opera I used to watch, Days of Our Lives, way back in the day. And it reminded me of like Sammy and Austin, where she like, which was trying to trap him with a kid and she would like poke holes in the condom, right? So when you mention like how people try to make the relationship better by having a kid, that's what I came across, because it doesn't necessarily make it better. It just forces some people to stay. And I guess maybe if I'm like, okay, let me trap Christina, make her stay, eventually Christina's gonna be like, you know what? He's not that bad. just
I
stay
don't
with
think
me.
so. I think it just makes things worse, because, to be honest, I really honestly believe it's better to be alone than to be with someone who's putting a dark cloud over you. And if you're with someone who's always, imagine having a baby crying and you are sleep deprived. That's almost like those tortures in Guantanamo, like you are sleep deprived, you are not sleeping. And on top of that, there's this noise, constant noise of screaming, and the touching, because there's always like contact with the baby, right? So you feel overtouched, you feel overstimulated, you're about to explode. And then imagine, instead of having someone who says, don't worry, try and sleep a little, I will take care of the baby now, I will take care of the colics. Instead, you have someone be like, what are you complaining about? Imagine how much worse it must feel. I cannot even imagine. So I really don't understand. And I think before you even marry someone, it has to be someone you actually enjoy living with. I think that the first step is always to go on holidays with someone. You immediately find out, is this a person I enjoy being with or not? Then you live with them, at least a
100%
little.
agree.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. And I would agree with you. Like, I don't see how people can use children to try to keep that person there and force them. Because, like, you have parents, I have parents. Imagine we found out that the only reason we're born was to trap someone. I would feel bad.
And worse, the children really notice that because even when parents try not to fight in front of their kids, because there's always those people who are like, but we don't fight in front of our kids. Kids are very perceptive. They really understand, even if you are not actually screaming at your spouse, but just the fact that you are there being really, this antagony, the kids notice that, and the worst thing about, especially with little kids, but even with older kids and even with adults, very often they believe that they are the reason why their parents split up. So I think it's really important to think like, is it better that we are together in this environment or that we are separated? Because if we want to stay together, then we really have to find a way to really be together, to be on the same track, because you need to be on the same track when it comes to parenting, at least. Right? You can
Why do
have
you
disagreements, but you need to find ways to make it work, because it cannot be mommy said this and that daddy said that.
why do you think so many parents struggle with understanding that one, both of them are needed, and two, they both have to be in unison when it comes to raising this child?
Yeah, so I think that it's like we are all different people, right? And even for instance, I'm very lucky that I found someone that is very in tune with me. We are very similar when it comes to parenting. We have the same values, so it makes it easier. But even then, we still fight sometimes. Not anymore, but when my son was born, for instance, that first year, for instance, the first time that I really was like, okay, this is the thing with the diapers, right? It cannot be one changes the diaper, one changes the diaper. We need to find a new normal, because it's really, I don't think I can even explain it so well, but it's, imagine you go from a life where you can watch TV, you can, and from one day to the other, right? Exactly. It's the day the kid is born. You come home from the hospital, your life changes like 180 degrees. It's completely different. And all those, and it's not really something you can prepare yourself for, because until you experience it, you don't know really what is the new normal, because it also depends on the child you are going to have. It depends on yourself, your personality, because you are going to be pushed to your limits and doing things you never thought you could do before. So this is not really something you can prepare yourself for. But in that moment, you need to be able to be like, okay, this is going to be our new normal. And this is a discussion that needs to be had. I think every couple will have this discussion in the first. So we also fought, and it's, by fighting is maybe a strong word, but we did have disagreements. And it's important that it's, instead of, I think it's always important to not use you, not you always use me, not use always, not to use never, to really try, basically apply positive discipline, but to to grown-ups. It's basically the same thing, right? So it's like you need to be like, this is making me feel like this and I need this. Now you explain what you want or what you need, and then we try and find a compromise that fits both of us. Because usually what happens is we are sleep deprived, we are very upset, and we just scream and are like, you never helped me. And then the other person is like, what do you mean? I just helped you like 5 minutes ago. You don't appreciate me. And then from then on,
Yeah, the power of communication is so lost when it comes to relationships, and it's so lost when it comes to handling children, because I think sometimes we forget we're all in this together, right? Like, we want to raise this child to the best of our ability. We want to maintain our relationship, marriage, whatever it is, to the best of our abilities. But some people, they literally draw the line in the sand in front of them, on both sides and behind them, and they just stand there and say, you know, Christina, no, it's going to be my way. Not even my way or the highway. It's just my way. And that is it, right? And I think sometimes parents struggle with understanding how important it is just to say, I need you to help me with this. Like, I know you have the Facebook group, I know you work with women. Like, how important is the communication piece when it comes to all of this?
Yeah, I think it's really important always to start with appreciations. It's the same as with children, right? Always connection before correction. So you always need to connect first, and always say, I really appreciate, and this is hard, of course, because when you're filled with emotions, this is hard, but it's something you can practice, right? But if you say, start by appreciating the other person. I really appreciate everything you've been trying to do to help me. This that you did yesterday was really helpful. This that you did today was really helpful. And I still need a bit more help in this and this and that. And one thing you were talking about, when parents are in, not having the same opinion on things, that's not even so bad when they actually discuss things. The worst that can happen, and it happens unfortunately a lot, is when people use their children as like their allies. So they start being like, oh, for me, you could do this, but you know how mom is. Or like, you can do this, but don't tell mom. Or the other way around. Or be like, your father, I'm sure he will put you the whole day in front of the TV. Because children, they start feeling, first of all, they start feeling like they have to choose, which is a really awful thing for a child. And the younger the child, the worse that is, right? Because they start really feeling like they have to take sides. Because it feels like you're asking them to take sides. And secondly, your child is not responsible for your validation of your emotions, right? They are just a child. They don't have their brain fully developed. They cannot comprehend. They are not your, this is a conversation maybe you have with a friend. Then you say, can't believe my husband or my ex-husband is always doing this. Or, but if you do this with a child, they don't have the capability to, and this will actually create really wrong beliefs, especially in young age. It's when children create those core beliefs, right? And we don't want this, right? Because then you will have a child that I give you the example of my cousin. My cousin, she had my grandmother. She didn't like the stepmother of my cousin. So whenever my cousin went from her stepmother's house to my grandmother's house, she was a little kid. She would always be like, oh, you don't need to enter. And you're a little kid, like 4 or 5 years old. You don't need to enter. It's okay. I can go alone by myself. Or like when my grandmother would start saying bad things about about her stepmother, she would be like, oh, please don't say that in front of her. So they start feeling like they have to be the peacemakers. And they are too young for that. They don't have the capabilities for that. They feel like it's their responsibility. When you fight, they feel that it was because they failed in keeping the peace. And this is such a huge weight to have on a small child's shoulders. So it's really important we don't do that.
So when you're working with the women, and I think from my understanding, you also have these conversations in your Facebook group as well, right? Like, what kind of guidance are you giving? Well, let me take that back. What commonalities are you seeing that the mothers are struggling with when it comes to that?
Well, I think the thing that women face the most is guilt. That's the biggest thing. So for instance, yeah, especially women that are, just post divorce or that are single moms, they very often feel the guilt. They feel like they failed their children by getting a divorce, that their children now have to go to two houses, whereas their friends only have one house. Their children ask, why isn't that here? And they feel personally guilty for not providing to their children what they believe is the ideal childhood. But this is fake for so many reasons. First of all, there is no such thing as ideal childhood. Families exist in all constellations, right? And it's really also, this is a great opportunity. I strongly believe, and this is harder said than done, but every challenge is an opportunity. Is an opportunity to teach our children in every way. So this is an opportunity really to explain to our children. Families come in all constellations. Some children have two moms. Some children have two dads. Some children live with their grandparents. Some children only live with their mom. Some children only live with their dad. We are all different families, the same way that there are big dogs and small dogs, and some dogs that bark a lot and different colors. So this is, you have to take every little thing, because and I keep going always to this topic, but when we are feeling swallowed in guilt, we lack the opportunity to grow and to help our children, because we just get, frozen in that guilt. We go to bed feeling like crap, and we are just frozen in that guilt. We cannot do anything anymore because we are just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And instead, we have to always see it as a growth opportunity, that growth mindset. Okay, how can I use this to help my child and give them life skills?
I think that's wise words because that is part of the responsibility of the parents to help prepare their children. For you, when you're working with the mothers, how far are you taking them along that journey
With their children,
with their
you mean?
children?
Yeah, so I what I help parents with, and especially moms, is always first with the self-compassion. So it's this growth mindset. It's the first thing that I help parents with, especially moms, because it's really important. It's really important to not have that idea of perfection, right? That we have to be perfect parents. It's the 51% approach. I screwed up. We all screwed up. It's part of being human. We are imperfect. We make mistakes. Now I'm going to tell my child I screwed up, so that my child also knows that even mommy screw up. Everyone screws up. So that when they screw up, they don't feel like they are screw ups. They just feel like they screw up once. And this is a really important distinction, right? So we have to show our children, I did something wrong. And this is what we do when we do something wrong. We apologize, we make amends, we try and find ways to solve the situation to make it better. So we are modeling this to our children, right? So I screamed at my child. And instead of being like, oh, I'm the worst mom, tomorrow I try again, today is lost. Because that child is going to be like, oh, my mom screamed at me, it's best because I'm an awful, awful kid. That's the only explanation, because young kids, they really believe that the whole world, revolves around them and everything happens because of them. So they will really believe that mommy screamed because they are bad kids. But when you go to your child and say, I screamed and it's not because of you, it's because I couldn't self-regulate. Sometimes when I'm mad, everyone is mad. Being mad is normal, and it's not okay to scream at people. And you don't deserve that anyone screams at you. So I'm sorry. And your child immediately will be like, it's okay, mommy, because especially small children, they just forgive. So you won't go to bed feeling like crap. And your child, most importantly, and that's the most important part, they will not feel like they are bad people. So it's so important to really focus just on the 51%. Okay, I screamed. That was my 49% of being crappy parent. Now I'm going to focus on 51%. So I'm going, and this is really important. So that's the first part that I help parents with, or mostly moms. And then it's also that part of self-care, because that's one of the problems that many women have, is we believe that we are not worthy of self-care, that there is no time for self-care for us, because there's children, there's the house, there's the bake sale for the kindergarten, there's this, the grandparents are coming, we need to clean the house, there's, the kid needs to go to soccer practice or whatever. It's all, nothing in life is a has to. I have to do this. When you think about it, if you got really sick now and you had to go to the hospital, all those things, what would happen? Like somehow they would get solved. So you have to think that if you don't take care of yourself, it's almost the same as ending up in the hospital, because you are going to be really on edge. You're going to be screaming at your kid all the time. You are not going to be the parent you want to be. And you cannot, and on top of that, you will constantly feel like you're failing, because you're failing because you didn't clean your house properly. You're failing because you didn't, you screamed at your kid. You're failing because you arrived late at your job. So we really need to fill up our cups so that we are not constantly on edge with our children. Because it's like that example I always give. If your child spills milk on a Sunday morning when you are feeling, a blissful peace, which is hard for parents, but let's imagine, you will probably be like, okay, that's okay. It happens. Let's clean it up. If it happens on a Monday morning when you're stressed out and your alarm clock didn't go, you will just blow up and be like, what did you do? Can't you see we are late? So it's not about what your child does. It's about how it triggers you. And the way it triggers you, it's very dependent on how you are feeling in that moment. And if you want to feel differently, you have to do something to feel differently, which means to fill up your cup. So self-care is not a luxury. It's really, really important. As I said, every single day I take at least 1 hour a day alone.
So for the men who date or maybe in a long-term relationship or married to, let's say, women who have children from a previous relationship, what advice could you give them to assist with the raising of the child, because that situation is a little bit different, but it does happen quite a bit these days.
Yeah, I would say that the most important thing is to not try and parent the children, and instead always ask the mom what they want, what are their needs. So instead of being like, oh, that child should be cleaning up their room, instead you can say, do you need me to do something to the mother, right? Is there something I can do to help you? Always referring to the mother, right? Because when we help the mother keep their cup full, that alone will already flow very much, much better. And then with time, the more we trust the person that they will do things as we want and that they care about what we want, then we are more likely to be, comfortable with that person taking care of our children.
I can see that being difficult for some men, because you know how some men are, right? They want to I don't want to say exert their authority because they're probably going to come for me, Christina, but they want to show that they're like the head of the household, right? Especially like these days where you hear a lot of stuff where a man has to show that he's the man of the house, right? This is my kingdom. I run all of this. I can see some men maybe being a little hesitant saying that, okay, I need to defer to her and say, hey, what is it that you need from me in this dynamic? Because I think sometimes, to your point earlier, we get confused, right? Like we think it's one way and one way only, but you made a fantastic analogy when you said that there's different constellations, right? There's two mothers in one household, there's two fathers, there's a mother and a father, there's a mother with kids from a previous situation with her new partner, there's a father with his children from a previous relationship, and the woman is here. So I think that men in this case, what I'm understanding is that they have to be adaptable, meaning that if you're dating a woman that has kids, support the woman in her raising the children. If it's two people come together and they're creating a kid, then you support each other, but you still have to raise that kid. Is that understanding correct?
I think that it's like if you wanna be with a woman that is a mother, you have to understand that her kids are the most important thing in the world for her, most likely, not always, right? Unfortunately, but it should be at least. and and so if you want to be with that mother, it also has to be for you that you are okay with that and that you find that a good thing. And if not, you have to think like, what do I actually want from this relationship? Do I want this woman to choose me above her kids? Because that's again going to that thing of wanting to change people, which never, so we have to like people the way they are. Otherwise, we have to find someone else, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think people are weird when it comes to that, right? Like I've seen people date, let's say, like an erotic dancer, right? Like they'll know that this person is an erotic dancer before they've started dating them, date them, and they'll be like, okay, you got to change. But that's how they were before them. Or to your point, right? It's like someone dates a mother and they're like, okay, you got to stop being a mom. But that's who they were. So you made the choice to date someone that was a mother before they became, let's say, your wife or your girlfriend. So I think some people have to understand that you have to respect that, because I've dated women that have children, but the children are older, like 18, 19. So I didn't have to be involved. And that's kind of my preference when I date, if I'm going to date women that has children. But if I were to date someone that has a child that's like 5 years old, in my mind, I should be thinking, okay, this woman is responsible for this child because this child is still very young, still needs her. And I have to understand that I'm going to be on sometimes equal footing or not so equal footing. But why do you think maybe, and I know you work with the women and you probably hear the stories, why did What are they telling you that is the biggest struggle with men who are unable to accept that they're a mother before they became your girlfriend?
Well, I never had that situation, to be honest. Usually, it's more women complaining either about their partners not helping, or their partners being a second child or a third child or fourth child, because that they require them to treat them as children, basically, or the women that are divorced and really have struggles with the exes, trying to get their parenting in the same. But actually, I wanted to go back into something you said about men feeling like they have to be the power of the household, because this comes very much from the way we were raised, right? The authoritarian parents, the boomers, and everything. And I would, invite everyone to question. So everyone who thinks like that, I wanted to question this. Why? And what example are you giving to the children, right? Because the children learn by seeing. So what does a boy learn when he sees his father being like, I'm the boss in this house, right? And the way they treat maybe their wives, right? What is that boy learning? And first of all, isn't it too much responsibility for them? So they always feel like that idea of like, when dad is not here, you are in charge of the household. Oh my God, he's a small child, 7, 8 years old. What do you mean in charge of the household? This is a child who doesn't have a complete brain. How are they going to be? Even if it's something you just say to look cool or whatever, or to be like, in the end, the child really believes that, they really believe that they have to be responsible for their mother. And it also gives that idea that women are just damsels in distress that constantly need men for everything. And this is really bad both for the boys and for the girls as they are growing up, right? So it's actually really, and I've been loving to see on social media more and more. Like every time I see a video on TikTok with a guy talking about parenting and he has his nails painted, I always love it so much because I know that guy has a little girl and he let her paint his nails, which is something that was unimaginable when I was growing up. Even hugs or things like that was because of that idea. And this is very bad also for the men because they also want to have those hugs and kisses and all that affection, because that's what being a human is all about. It's the connection. It's why we have children also. It's because we want to feel that connection. And they are basically fighting with their own instincts because of what they believe society expects them to behave, which is so surreal. And that's actually something that today it's about the expectations we put on our children, right? Because it's like we feel like society that this is the way it should be. And then we pass this along to our children. And actually, today I saw a post about this. It was about this idea of telling children that success is academical achievement, that success is having a good job, a high paying job, right? Because even the word good job is just a social construct, right? So in my personal opinion, success is none of those things. Success is being able to be yourself, being able to pursue your passions, and feeling loved. This is what success is for me personally. But very much, many of us, we were raised in a way that was like success is academical achievement. And it's very much awful what I see people do. And when I see people say things like, see your uncle, whatever, your uncle John, if you don't study, you will end up like him. Do you see? Or do you see that homeless person? If you don't study, you will. This is so bad for so many reasons, because it is true that we should show our children that are the people that are less advantaged, that are less fortunate than us. But we should do this in a perspective of empathy. These people can happen to anyone. Anyone can become homeless. It's not that they are bad people. Anyone, it can happen to anyone. You are fortunate that you are not homeless, and have compassion for this person. Not being like, look, we are superior to that homeless person. And if you don't want to end up, they are homeless because they didn't study, which is also a very wrong way, because there are people who study, they are homeless also, right? But, if you study, then you won't be like that. You are superior to this person. So that alone is already awful, right? But then we are also putting this idea, and I grew up like that your self-worth is attached to your grades. Your self-worth is attached to the job you have. Like a doctor has more worth, is more, has more worth, has more value than a garbage man, you know. And this is such a wrong way to see the world, I think. And when we are, I'm out of words. Because
No, I
it's,
can I can add because this is something that's very dear to my heart, and there's so much I can unpack there. First and foremost, I agree with putting this tremendous amount of pressure on the shoulders of men specifically, and this is why so many men decide to end their lives because they feel like they can't compete. They feel like they can't compare. And they're like, oh my God, I was raised and I was told by anyone around me and everyone around me that I have to achieve X. And if I don't achieve X, I'm nothing. I don't have value. I'm not successful. So when you have men out there that aren't achieving these things, they have two choices, right? And some of them decide to say that, okay, I don't want to exist anymore. And another thing that you mentioned, which I thought was really, really beautifully said, is that when we are looking to determine our own value, why is it that we need to go to other people to find it? Why can't we find it within ourselves? Right. And you mentioned that a doctor has X value and someone who collects garbage has Y value. And it's so true that we look at certain people have certain jobs, we're like, okay, this person's special, this person's successful. This person over here might be a barista. They might work at wherever. This person is not so much. But some people don't understand there's some jobs that are quote unquote bad jobs, which actually make more money than the jobs that are quote unquote good jobs. And a lot of people assign value to how much money you make from the job, but they don't see it that way. And you're absolutely right. It's quite strange how we've come to the point where it's like before I even want to know the color of the character of the person, I want to know the color of your wallet, meaning how much money you have there, right?
I think that my life is just, you just described my life. I was, I spent my whole life thinking that the goal in life was to have good grades, to have a good job, so that people would treat you a certain way. So that's what I did. I was a great student. I did a master. I worked as a fund manager. I managed investment funds. I had a job that people considered successful. And I was on the verge of a burnout. I hated my job. I didn't know I hated it at the time, but I did because I was also doing this, through the real estate crisis and all that. So it was very stressful. And then actually I met my husband. It was not on purpose. It just happened that I came to Germany because it was a choice, like, he loved his job. I hated my job. I saw it as an opportunity. Why should he come to my country, to Portugal, when I can go there? I mean, I hate my job. Why should he give up something he loves when I have something I hate, right? So I'm just going to go there. And at the time, I was just so full of myself that I honestly believed I would do like this and get a job. Because that was always the way for me. I always had that ease of life growing up. I always had the best grades, so I always had, like, I could always change jobs, I could always, and then I came here and I faced this reality that no, doing a 2-month German course does not mean you speak fluent German. And people here don't speak English so much. At least that was my experience, right? I lived in Bavaria. And so, yeah, it didn't work. And after a year, I went back to Portugal, and I felt like a failure. I was like, oh my God, what did I do? And everyone was treating me like that, by the way. Everyone was like, what did you do with your life? Now there's a crisis here, because then there was the bank crisis afterwards. And now you cannot, like, find a job anymore. And I remember my mom was like, as long as you have a roof over your head, you have food. And I still feel so grateful for that support, because it just made me feel like, it's not urgent. Because what you were saying, many people in their lives is because of that pressure, right? When you don't have anyone to tell you it's okay, it's okay. You don't have to be all those things. And then I decided, no, you know what? These are just social constructs. This is not me. I am not do actually I felt like the more I was that person, I was less and less me. And that year I spent in Germany, I was becoming more and more me. So I actually didn't really feel like going back to all that. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take whatever job I find, the first one. And it was at a call center. And I was so ashamed of that. I was so ashamed. I didn't tell anyone. I wouldn't tell any of my previous coworkers because I was so ashamed. I was like, oh my God, this is the worst thing working at the call center. Oh my God. Like, everyone will be. And then it was the best job I've ever had in my life. Really. It was the most amazing job ever. I earned minimum wage, but I worked like 8 hours and not 1 minute more. If I would work 5 minutes more, people would say thank you. Which I wasn't used to because I used to work like 12 hours without no one saying thank you. I could do things. I could read a book while I was working. Everyone in the call center thought it was a very stressful job, but for me, it was really relaxing. I didn't have to wear a suit. I didn't have to wear makeup, do my nails, none of those things. I felt so free. And that kind of started my process of becoming more and more myself, right? And I really believe that it's all about that external validation. We raise children like that. Instead of bringing into them internal motivation, we focus on external validation. If you do this, good job. You did great. I think you are good. I think you did a good job. Here is a prize to show that you have a good job, that you did a good job and you are a good person, you know. And if you do something wrong, here is a punishment because you cannot do it by yourself. You don't know the right and wrong. You need this external validation and punishments. And, it's so important that we focus on teaching children internal motivation, right? I am not behaving because I want to watch a little bit of my tablet, or I want to get the chocolate in return, or I am afraid my mom will punish me, or it's not about that. I want to behave because I understand the value in behaving, because I know it will it will make things better for me, regardless of anyone else, because when I put my toys away, it's easier for me to have more space now to play with the other toys. It's not because if I don't put my toys away, I will not get dessert this night.
I love that point because so many people suffer with maintaining balance in their life because work is so demanding, expectations from other people can be so demanding. But as long as you look inside yourself and then have someone to support you, you can work towards that balance. And speaking of the balance with the parents and with those who are trying to find themselves, what's next for changing parenting?
Yeah, so I am right now. I have this group on Facebook that is just for parents of little kids, and it's mostly moms there also. So for it, there, it's basically parents support each other. I give parenting tips also, how to get your child to do this and do that. I also have some experts coming into the group that give some tips on certain things, like how to get your child to try new foods, things like that. It's called Parents of Preschoolers Facebook group. And then for all age groups, I also offer one-on-one coaching for those people who want a little bit more help, because sometimes we just need a little help turning what we know into something that is actually what we do.
So as we close, Christina, give us a few tips for the mothers out there who are beginning their journey as maybe new mothers and want to be set up for success in their parenting journey.
Come to terms with the fact that you will fail, that you will never be a perfect parent, and take away all the I have to. You don't have to have your room at that temperature. You don't have to, make your child try first carrots and then apples, and then those are all, you don't take away all the pressures, for as much pressure as you can from yourself, and think about everything. Whenever you have one thought, and this has been my mantra now for the last week, more or less, whenever you think I have to, think again, why I don't have to. No, I don't have to do this. I don't have to do this. What could I do instead? Because parenting is meant to be enjoyed, and time passes really, really fast.